could just unplug that one.
Okay, good evening. Am I audible? Well, yeah, okay, good. Thanks, welcome everybody, and thanks so much for coming along tonight. Okay, so just actually I wanted to mention that it's very nice. I realized the last couple of times bowing to all of you is a rare opportunity because you know, I remember one time way back, like almost 10 years ago when I was first at Mountain Cloud, one evening I was about to start a talk and I just was sort of unable to speak, and I suddenly realized what I wanted to do was bow to everybody. So I got up and I bowed to everybody, one by one around the Zenda, deep bow. Maybe I seem to remember somehow in my mind there were 19 people. So it was a very big night. By the end of doing 19 prostrations, actually my back, which is not super healthy always, you know, was really sort of struggling. And I thought, well, I haven't done it again. And so I realized, but actually on Zoom, it's a great opportunity. I can bow to everybody. And I only really have to do 3 bows, and everybody's getting them. So everybody's getting 3, not just 1. So anyway, I'm going to avail myself of this opportunity whenever I can. It's a great honor to be able to bow to you. So thank you very, very much. It makes me feel in my rightful place, so to speak. And I should really just bow non-stop for half an hour, and that would be the end of the talk, and we'd all be much better off. But I'm obliged to use words. It's part of our training. It's part of our process in Sambo Zen. So I'm going to dive in. And I think if this talk had a title, maybe it would be Courage to Grow. So let's see how it goes. Courage to grow. I want to go over a few things that you'll have heard before. Basically, broadly speaking, you know, you could regard meditation practice as kind of having 3 phases, perhaps, or 3 areas that get addressed. The first is sati in Pali, or smriti in Sanskrit, usually translated as mindfulness. I think of it these days as loving awareness of experience here and now. In fact, I might say it's loving return to experience now. Loving return to here and now. Loving because I think it needs to be in there somehow, because if you look at what makes us not be in the here and now, underneath various distractions and desires and aversions, somewhere there's some kind of unwillingness to be here and now on some level, generally. There's something that's keeping us out of it. And in a way that might commonly be some kind of discomfort or pain, which needs a compassionate welcome. So I think it's probably generally, as a rule of thumb, fair to say that our loving return to the here and now might need to be infused with compassion. And you know, compassion isn't an idea. It's not really even an attitude. It's a warm feeling. It's a warm, tender feeling. And if it's not a feeling, it's not really active. You know, it's like it's a direct experience here and now. You know, in this kind of zone, round about here, you feel it, and it's tender, and it's very nice. And in a way, when we really hit compassion, in some sense, we're not exactly the owners of it. We're not exactly the creators of it. It's like we, in a little way, get out of the way and let compassion come up and show itself. So it's an absolutely key ingredient or element in our meditation training. Second phase, let me call it like this, is samadhi, concentration, absorption, gathering together, unifying, whole, single, depth, absorption, like sort of getting really, I mean, samadhi has many forms, but among them are sort of just no idea where the time went, not lost in thought at all, but no idea where the time went. Like slipping into a sort of dark lake and you just don't know where you've been, but you've been thoroughly present. And that's one. I mean, there's many, many guises it has. Under samadhi, probably we also would put the jhana states. In some systems there'd be forms of samadhi, deeper and deeper forms of absorption. And that's very important in Zen. It's probably, I would argue, very important in any practice that's serious about awakening, because it's concentration that is the highway really to awakening. And then the third sort of phase, if I can call it that, would be what in Mahayana Buddhism is called Prajna, wisdom. Beyond knowing is awakening. Certainly the term has other meanings, especially in Theravada. It's got at least, perhaps 2 or 3 main meanings. I'm not sure, but one of them might be this, and another in maybe clearer understanding of the mechanisms of suffering. Essentially of the Four Noble Truths, how suffering is generated, how suffering is ended. That would be certainly one form of prajna. In Mahayana, it tends to mean this seeing through, awakening. And a perfect little illustration of these two, the second and third sort of phases I'm talking about, would be in the koan I mentioned before not long ago. Unmon, a monk asked Unmon, Yunmen is also his name. A monk asked Yunmen, not a single thought arises. Is there any fault or not? That's the monk's question. It's a nice presentation, basically, of samadhi. He's talking about samadhi. Not a single thought arises. He's a deep, deep absorption, deep, unified experience of the here and now without any thought arising, without anything draining out of it, just fully one whole absorption. Beautiful. Not a single thought arising. And then he asks, is there any fault or not? So he's presenting samadhi. Maybe it's one of the dhyanas, he's hitting. And Unmon's response, right off the bat, is Mount Sumeru. Now, Mount Sumeru is the great world mountain. Basically, Unmon, he's not messing around with samadhi. He's presenting prajna. For him, it's sort of, for him, it's actually true that not a single thought ever arises. That Unmon has completely broken through, completely seen through long ago. It's not an issue, because he knows, he knows what it really means to say not a single thought arises. See, for the monk, it means I'm in deep, quiet absorption. But for Unmon, who's seen through, it means something else. It means prajna. Not a single thought ever arises, no matter how many thoughts arise. That's Unmon's clarity. So Mount Sumeru, why he says Mount Sumeru, very beautiful. One level, he's simply telling the monk a thought. Here's a thought. Mount Sumeru, that's a thought. But not a single thought is arising. But now, any, you know, I know this might sound really sort of crazy or idiotic or stupidly paradoxical or abstract or something. It's not when you experience it. When you clearly see through, in this experience we call prajna, we could designate prajna, true wisdom in the Mahayana sense, seeing through. Seeing through, when you see this moment, whatever it is, when you clearly see this moment, you can actually sort of embrace it on all these three levels. You know, it's just this perfect, beautiful expression of the creative universe arising just like this, just now, beautiful. Also, you know, you can go deep into being thoroughly absorbed in it. There's no separation, or separation is getting very blurry. You're just one whole, you're sitting and your awareness is diffusing everything around you. It's all one, it's one whole experience, sitting. Great. But also, if you've seen through, you see that you're sitting, everything's appearing, you're here, body, floor, walls, computer, sunlight, you know, all here, and you just see through it. It's here and it's transparent. As Setcho, who compiled the Blue Cliff Records, said once, Crystal Palace. Actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't Setcho, it was Tango, earlier master. He said, in the Crystal Palace, there's no one who knows, is what he said in a verse. And the Crystal Palace, he's talking about this moment, when you can see this moment as a crystal palace. Crystal, because it's see-through. It's so beautiful. It's see-through. But that doesn't actually deny the other sort of other ways of experiencing it. You know, it doesn't negate them. It's very, very beautiful to taste this. So these three levels of, in a way, of how our practice can sort of develop. You know, and as you know, that this koan path has perhaps. I mean, I think it's fair to say it aims to address all three. You need to develop some mindfulness, foundation of mindfulness. Then you can move into absorption, concentration, becoming one with, becoming nothing but a koan, if that's what you're sitting with. Mu, perhaps, or who is this? What is this? Just nothing but that. Nothing but that. And more finding out what it means to say nothing but that. Really nothing but that. And then from that, whenever conditions are ripe, you know, suddenly, you know, the Red Sea parts or whatever, the veil is sundered, suddenly the whatever, the doors of perception open, or I don't know how to put it, but suddenly, you know, without any real, you know, without any sort of contrivance on our part, suddenly it just shows itself. It wants to show itself, basically. You know, the reality of prajna wants to show itself, but it only it can do it. You know, we can't make it show itself. We can't see it because we're already in. So it has to be a matter of, we do our practice the best we can, and then when the time is ripe, when conditions are aligned in levels that we will probably never know, it'll show itself. And the only thing we can be fairly sure of is that practice makes it more liable to happen. Especially if you're practicing in a context, a sort of wholesome, you know, hopefully reasonably healthy context that, you know, frankly, a lineage really helps a lot if the lineage knows about this. You know, as the lineage feels it's sort of sacred charge to keep this pathway to come to our deepest home, to keep it open. You know, and you know, of course, there are many good things that many lineages do, and our particular one has got that emphasis. It hasn't really sort of compromised it. You know, they always say the day we're not really conveying this Dharma as we understand it, we'll just close it down. It doesn't matter, you know, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter if lots of people are coming. It doesn't matter if we're not actually conveying the Dharma as we've received it, you know, from our masters and the masters before, then it's a waste of time. That's the only thing that really matters. Now, that's quite a sort of hardcore line, but I think it has its virtues, because it does mean that we know what we're about, really, and it also gives us because all the teachers in this lineage are, you know, been some amount of sort of, you know, checked multiply over decades by different teachers. You know, there's and ongoingly there's some sort of accountability, and there's some kind of, I mean, I hate to say it, but some sort of, in a sense, quality control. We hope, you know, I mean, of course it's not perfect, but we hope there's some. Occasionally the old, you know, substandard one slips through the net, like Henry, you know, but I'm doing my best to try to edge up a little bit, get a little clearer. I don't stop my training, you know. But anyway, so it's obviously not perfect, but we do our best, you know, and we are trying. And I think it's probably, you can see in a way also that because we're after this level of clarity and freedom that comes from really seeing through, I hope you'll agree from the other teachers you've experienced who've been coming into Zoom, we're relatively, I hope, sort of natural. We don't have to sort of pose. We don't have to act in a certain manner and sort of wear special clothes. You know, I mean, that's got its place. But in us, our line, it's like, it's really about trying to just really get clear. That's what matters. And that should leave us quite free and natural, and not needing to put on sort of airs and graces. I mean, that's how we see it anyway. I hope we're right. And I hope we live up to that. Well, I certainly hope that I do. I think there's many other masters who, in our lineage, who undoubtedly do. I'm trying to live up to them. Okay, now, what I want to get to now, and I won't go on a whole lot longer, but basically, to do those things I just outlined, those steps, it's a growth path. I mean, in a certain way, you know, if you're really sort of being deep about it, it's not, because it's all here already. There's no growing, really. But it is in the sense that on our human level, we're shedding more and more and more. We're letting go of more and more and more. And to let go is what growth is about in this training. And it's not that easy. There's a reason we hold on to things. And that we feel we need things. I mean, I'm not talking necessarily about material things. I'm talking about, I suppose, sort of psychic things, psychological things, whatever kinds of syndromes, complexes, whatever, in Buddhist terminology, delusions or conditionings we may have that we hold on to. We feel we need them. You know, it's serving us in some way to hold them, including, of course, our beloved sense of self. It's not an easy thing to let go of. But actually, to go through these stages or these phases, allow me to think that way just for a moment, is a path of growth. Now, is it sort of enough? Is it complete? Well, last week we heard from my Dharma uncle, David Loy, who's saying essentially, well, maybe it's not. Maybe we do our sitting and our meditation, but we must also be striving to live our practice and our ideals and aspirations that we have in practice in the world the best we can. And he's undoubtedly right. And in fact, all the traditional maps of Zen insist on that. That the training is really not supposed to end up in a cloistered, sequestered, rarefied place. It's supposed to end up on the streets, basically. You know, it's supposed to be in the midst of ordinary living that we share, we open our hearts, we in a sense, can I say it, share the Dharma. I mean, not by trying to train people in Zen, just by living, by being clear what this moment is, in a sense, in a deeper way, and letting that the loving force that's implicit in it somehow sort of come up through us and sort of guide us in the midst of the troubles of the world. Now, right now, as we all know, we seem to be going through a critical, new, much needed repeat of a moral awakening in this country that is so grievously long overdue. Yes, it's sort of happened before, but never really enough. I mean, not at all. And we white folks are implicit in the problem. We are the problem. And, you know, of course, it's a difficult thing to hear, because I think probably all of us here are very well intentioned and don't in any way, you know, want to be cruel and oppressive, and let alone racist. But it's not really about our own inclinations and our own intentions. We're talking about a system that we are not just embedded in, but we're a kind of embodiment of. We are. And what on earth do we do about it? Well, the first thing we do is get educated and start to realize more clearly just how much this country is a sort of savagely racist place, and makes life incredibly difficult for, what, 30% of its population? You know, at a significant, I mean, not just significant, a really brutal set of disadvantages. Now, what do we do about it? Well, and how does practice speak to it? Well, I'm just going to offer a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, first is, you know, actually, if you look at, say, the 6 parameters, the 6 virtues of Mahayana Buddhism, the first 2 are generosity and shila. Shila meaning ethical living, means non-harming living. It basically means don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't misuse sexuality, don't use intoxicants. The reason for not using intoxicants is primarily that they make it far more likely we'll break the other 4. I mean, there are other things too. Why, you know, the whole path is about having a clearer mind. But if we look at this, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. I mean, what a shock if you hold those up against the history of Europeans. The history of, you know, our white people. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie. Wow. Wow. Well, how is this country founded? By killing, by stealing, and by repeated lying. And the lying is still going on. And it's our responsibility to get clear about that and speak against it, I think. You know, and I mean, if you haven't yet watched some of these talks that we've been talking about recently, like the Jeffrey Robinson, the president of the ACLU, talking about the truth of the Confederacy. There's the tissue of lies that the whole thing has been, successively, that we're still in. There was a great article today in the New York Times saying what a lie it really is to talk about race relations and racial tension. How can you even use terms like that when essentially, a whole mass of people is being utterly oppressed, and if anybody objects, it's racial tension. And of course, that's a nonsense. It's euphemisms and lies. So this is breaking the first three of the grave precepts. But not just, the thing about it is that, it's difficult for us because we tend to think about this individually. Like, I'm not breaking the precepts. I'm committed to not breaking the precepts. But what David Loy has been talking about and writing about for a few years now, and if you haven't read his book, A New Buddhist Path, I strongly recommend it. Essentially, his argument is that we really have to apply all the precepts and all the practice, not just individually, but systemically. We have to acknowledge and own the fact that we are part of deeply oppressive systems that live by the three poisons and customarily break the grave precepts. And we fair enough, we say, well, I'm not doing that, but actually we are part of a system that is doing that. And what is our responsibility to try to stop it doing that? I know it's desperate because we have a political system that's almost completely sold to the highest bidders, but we don't quite. We have to keep trying, and we have to keep applying pressure where we can. So to own up to this, to open up to this, to really, own our part in it, well, I would consider that growth. And I think it takes courage. And I think having a practice like this can give us the kind of courage we need. Why? Well, because we open up to loving return to the reality of experience now. It's a crucial part of this practice, is opening up to compassion, finding that there is basically always compassion available. I mean, we as beings can find an intrinsic compassion, and it's not exactly our own. We're supported by it. And I've talked about this in the last retreat, it likes us to grow. It comes forth more as we grow. That's why difficult paths of practice like this one are possible. So actually we end up not having to do it alone. The more we go, the more we surrender here and there, and trust and let go and do all the things we don't want to do. The more we do that, the more support emerges, and the more compassion becomes a dominant feature of our lives. Therefore, the more we know we're supported. So there's that. Now, another point, this is my last point tonight. You can see echoes of what I've just been saying, by the way, in the Eightfold Path. The first of the chunks of the Eightfold Path are about ethical living also, but they're also about clarifying some basic delusions, getting clearer about the reality of how suffering is created. That also would be a clear, instruction really, to be looking at the reality of our situation now, not just individually, but systemically. We are part of the system. We're carrying the system, however much we may not want to. Of course, not all of us, but many of us, white folks in this Sangha, we are embodying the system. And it's not that easy for us to own up to that and recognize that. But somehow, this moral awakening that we're called to right now, we have to. And this practice is going to support us in it. And it pushes us to do that very thing. right at the very first step of the Eightfold Path. You know, getting clear understanding, clear view, you know, seeing how suffering is created. Now, it's true, back in the day, Buddha's day, it seems that it did mostly mean it individually, but that's not how it is today. It's individually and systemically. Okay, that. Now, the other thing is interesting, very much tied into sitting practice, into mindfulness practice. As we become aware of basically dynamics of suffering in the body, which we will do, you know, I talk about that quite a bit, finding, you know, the experience of suffering in the body. That's part of our mindfulness training. Well, some of you may know, I think it was going around our last retreat, a really, really nice podcast. I mean, nice is not the right word, powerful podcast with this guy, Resmaa Menakem, who's written a book called My Grandmother's Hands, which I've got on order, so I haven't read it yet, but very, very interesting podcast called, it's on Being, Krista Tippett. So you can sort of find it if you Google him and her. He's saying, you know, basically, it's all about, I mean, his view, one angle, one of his angles on this whole system is racialized stress in the body, PTSD carried intergenerationally in the body. And actually, not just people of color, white folks brutalized by white folks. We're carrying it too. And unacknowledged trauma is sort of a, dare I say it, dangerous thing. You know, and so we tend to act it out. And it can happen at a can you say a populational, I don't know if that word exists, at the level of a whole culture, the level of a whole people, it can happen. As well as it can, of course, personally, individually. You know, many families, family systems carrying trauma, pass it on, you know, one generation after another. But actually cultures can do it too. You know, and you know, there's sort of glaring examples around the world of traumatized people, a people that's been traumatized, put in a position of power. What do? They brutalize another people who they're oppressing. And now, so all these European folks come into the new world, you know, ostensibly to find a better life, sort of crawling out of the brutalities of medieval Europe. And imagine a set of countries that had hundreds of years of war over whether you should pray this way or that way. To this, you know, same God, same religion, but we don't agree with the way you do it, not exactly. We got a different way. Therefore, we're going to fight you and kill you for hundreds of years. You know, the one war alone was 100 years long. All these religious wars, not to mention just, you know, thousands of years of brutality preceding religious wars. You know, and I mean, Julius Caesar goes to Gaul, kills 2 million people. 2 million people back in whenever it was, 44 BC or 50 BC or something. Back then, that was a lot of the Earth's population. 1 to 2 million, apparently, Julius Caesar. You know, this has been going on and on and on, you know, and so, you know, where do we find a stop to this endless passing on of trauma? You know where, right? Now, on the cushion. Stop, let's stop it. Let's not pass it on. Let's sit with our own guts that we are doing that. And it's actually, I think it takes courage. And I want you, what I really hope above all, I think, is that, you know, the point of this whole sort of system of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you're sitting in a sort of a structured way that it has come down over the centuries, having community of sitting together, having some amount of coaching, guidance, teaching from somebody who's, you know, doing their best to pass on the way things have been opened up for them by their teachers before them, who likewise had things opened up for them, passing that on, just passing it on, not reading anything sort of that they own or they want to own, they're just trying to share it. It's not the teacher, it's the Dharma that they've been allowed to come to through their teachers, and they just doing their best to share basically, just to help each of us, you know, come back to this infinite home also, you know. So all of that is, you know, great but scary. And when it includes opening up pain and facing the great distress of our participation in a system of cruelty, it's not easy, you know. But actually, my real hope is that having this sort of package that, you know, that we have in Zen and in Sambo Zen, you know, it's no doubt it's limited, no doubt it's got its drawbacks, no doubt it's got its pitfalls, but it is enough. It's a whole package that can actually let everybody really grow profoundly. If you just sort of, you know, trust it, just try it really. You don't really have to trust it that much. Try it, you know, and it really is, it gives us the context we need to grow. And it can give us the context that we need to grow, you know, in multiple ways. And I think I've expressed it, right? I think the message that I'm trying to convey has sort of come through. I hope it has. Courage to grow through a training process, through a context that has some key components. And you know, those of you who are sort of in it, you've got those key components. Have courage. You know, that means have trust. That means let go. Courage, trust, surrender, let go. Grow. It all is sort of part of it's all of a piece. And it's really, it's just what we're called to do. You know, and it's, you know, it's this, you know, like I was saying, like, face the pain, the support comes. Meet it with compassion, there it is. The support comes, the support is compassion, boundless compassion, limitless compassion. But same thing in growing in the sense of facing up to whatever our participation may already be and may need to become in the moral awakening of this country now. And having this trust that the support comes as we do it. Okay, I think I think I said more than enough. If my back gets strong enough, maybe one of these times I'll simply bow. But I'm afraid I think it's probably a little unlikely right now. Now, just closing, I want to just thank Christy, who did the most amazing art show. I hope you all had a chance to see her absolutely beautiful paintings and works inspired by mountain cloud. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous set of pictures. And some of you were kind enough to actually help with our sort of fundraising efforts that exhibition was part of. So thank you very, very much indeed to those who generously, you know, generously gave in that way. That first paramita. It's interesting, isn't it, that in the Mahayana, the very first step on the path, it's not getting clear about this or that. It's being generous. Isn't that interesting? The very first step is to be generous. There's a mind-blowing wisdom in that. Mind-blowing. I somehow feel if we just get that, the rest come like dominoes. So thank you. I'm just going to take a quick look at the chat in case there's anything I ought to look at. Yeah, no, one here is sort of not quite right. Yeah, Resma Menachem, that's the author of that book about my grandmother's hands, and the podcast is called On Being, and so you can look at in the chat. The name is there if you want. So look, go well. And till soon. We got our retreat next Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 whole days. Absolutely thrilled and honored that Valerie is joining us. We'll definitely have Q&A, by the way, every day during the retreat, as well as talks. And thank you again.